the Maori chief who outsmarted the British Empire. One man made the British Empire look like amateurs for 20 years, and they never figured out how he did it. The year is 1830. British colonial forces had conquered indigenous peoples on 3 continents using the same playbook: superior weapons, divide-and-conquer tactics, and overwhelming military organization. They arrived in New Zealand confident this would be another easy victory. Then they met Te Raparaha. This Maori chief would spend the next 2 decades systematically dismantling British strategy using tactics so brilliant that military academies still teach them today. West Point, Sandhurst. They study this guy. What made him dangerous wasn't just tactical genius. He understood his enemies better than they understood themselves. And here's the crazy part, he wasn't even supposed to be a chief. Te Raparaha was a younger son. No inheritance, no army, no traditional claim to power, which meant he had to earn everything through pure intelligence. Growing up without inherited authority forced him to develop skills other chiefs never needed: observation, adaptation, ruthless strategic thinking. He had no traditional playbook to follow, so he created his own. Picture this: while highborn chiefs relied on bloodlines and traditional authority, Te Raparaha built power through strategic alliances, calculated marriages, and proving his worth in battle after battle. He learned early that intelligence could overcome any disadvantage of birth. But here's where it gets interesting. When European traders arrived with muskets in the 1820s, other chiefs scrambled to get as many guns as possible. Te Raparaha saw something different. He didn't just want weapons. He wanted to understand the entire European system: warfare, trade, politics, psychology. So he did something revolutionary. He embedded himself with European traders, learned their language, watched them negotiate, studied their decision-making patterns. While they thought he was just another curious native, Te Raparaha was conducting intelligence gathering that would make modern spies jealous. What he discovered changed everything. Europeans weren't the unified force they pretended to be. British traders hated French traders. Sydney merchants competed with Wellington merchants. Individual captains cared more about profit than empire. Te Raparaha realized, I can play them against each other while they think they're playing me. His strategy was elegant. He'd offer exclusive trading partnerships to different European groups, making each believe they had special access while maintaining complete independence. When one group pressured him, he'd threaten to trade exclusively with their rivals. The Europeans, trapped by their own greed, couldn't coordinate against him. Their competition made them Te Raparaha's unwitting allies. But wait, it gets better. Te Raparaha's true genius emerged when British forces arrived for conquest. He realized something British commanders never understood. In New Zealand, their rulebook was useless. British military doctrine relied on set-piece battles, clear battle lines, conventional tactics. Te Raparaha made conventional warfare impossible. He would attack where British forces weren't, disappear when they arrived, strike from unexpected directions. His warriors crossed terrain British troops couldn't navigate, moved at speeds European armies couldn't match, fought in conditions that paralyzed conventional forces. But here's what made him truly brilliant: he wasn't just avoiding British strength. He was forcing them to waste resources on defense while he chose when and where to engage. British forces would march through difficult terrain to confront him, only to find empty villages. Meanwhile, Te Raparaha was attacking their supply lines 50 miles away. When they rushed to defend supplies, he'd already moved to raid their allies. When they tried to predict his movements, he'd change his pattern entirely. Imagine being a British commander reporting back, "We can't find him. He's everywhere and nowhere." The British were fighting an enemy who refused to play by their rules, and it was driving them insane. And then he pulled his masterstroke. Te Raparaha understood that British colonial power wasn't just military, it was built on the perception of invincibility. So he set out to destroy that perception systematically. Small British patrols would be ambushed and defeated by forces they outnumbered. Supply convoys disappeared without trace. British allied chiefs would suddenly switch sides after private meetings with Te Raparaha, bringing their warriors with them. Each small victory eroded British authority more than major battles ever could. Local tribes started questioning, if Te Raparaha can defeat them, why should we fear them? The British response was predictable: send more troops, build more forts, establish more control. which was exactly what Te Raparaha wanted. Every fort the British built locked troops in defensive positions. Every additional soldier meant longer supply lines to attack. Every show of force pushed more tribes toward Te Raparaha's vision. He was turning British military strength into strategic weakness, and they couldn't figure out how to stop it. Here's the part that changed everything. Te Raparaha understood that winning militarily wasn't the ultimate goal. Survival and autonomy were. He never tried to completely defeat the British. He knew that was impossible. They could always send more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Instead, he made conquest too expensive to pursue. Every victory cost them resources. Every advance required defending more territory. Every year of conflict drained their treasury and political will. Think about what this means. Te Raparaha understood that empires operate on cost-benefit calculations. He was systematically making the cost exceed any possible benefit. He wasn't fighting for total victory. He was making victory so expensive that the British would eventually negotiate rather than continue fighting. And it worked. British authorities, facing mounting costs and no clear path to victory, eventually sought negotiations with Te Raparaha rather than continuing the conflict. He had achieved something remarkable, not defeating the British Empire in conventional terms, but making them accept his continued existence and power. For 20 years, one indigenous leader forced the most powerful empire in the world to respect his autonomy. But the most incredible aspect? He maintained this strategy for decades while adapting to changing circumstances. When the British changed tactics, he changed his approach. When new technologies arrived, he incorporated them. When political situations shifted, he adjusted his alliances. The British were playing checkers. He was playing 4D chess. Modern military analysts have identified principles from Te Raparaha's campaigns that are still taught today. Using enemy strengths against them. Making victory too expensive to pursue. Maintaining strategic flexibility. Psychological warfare as a force multiplier. Information dominance through intelligence gathering. These aren't just military tactics. They're business strategies, political maneuvers, negotiation frameworks. Te Raparaha didn't just outsmart the British Empire. He proved that indigenous leaders could match or exceed European strategic thinking when given the opportunity. Here's why his story matters today. Te Raparaha proved that strategic intelligence can overcome massive disadvantages in resources and technology. He showed that understanding your opponent's psychology, economics, and political constraints matters more than raw military power. His legacy isn't just in Maori history. It's fundamental proof that indigenous peoples weren't tactically inferior to European colonizers. They were often strategically superior, working with different advantages that European military doctrine couldn't comprehend or counter. The Maori chief who outsmarted the British Empire didn't do it through one brilliant battle or lucky victory. He did it through sustained strategic genius that made conquest impossible and negotiation inevitable. Te Raparaha died in 1849, never conquered. The British Empire eventually colonized New Zealand, but they never broke the Maori spirit he proved couldn't be broken. That's not just history. That's proof that intelligence, strategy, and understanding your enemy matters more than raw power. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy completely. It's making them accept that they can't defeat you. Always has. Always will. What would you do with that kind of strategic genius today?